Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Good evening.
So, another academic feast today, sir. This is the 60th Enoch DigiConnect webinar, which we'll be holding.
A diamond jubilee, so to say.
Yeah. So we welcome both our speakers, our guest speaker, Dr. Chandrakant Laharia, and our Senior Vice President from Delhi is AUSD is Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain. May I request our President, Dr. Gajendra Kumar Saab, to give the welcome address.
Good evening, friends. As Dr. Sandeep has mentioned, today we are organizing the 60th webinar of our program, which we are having on every Saturday in the evening for last now more than 1.5 years. And today's topic is very, very important because both the speakers are going to speak on the epidemiological aspect, the prevention, and about the spread of the disease. As all of us are aware that the imminent third wave is coming, and we have to prepare for it. So I welcome my both the speakers, Dr. Chandrakant Laharia, who is a leading epidemiologist, Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain, our Vice President, and I welcome all the participants in this webinar. So with these few words, I hand over to Dr. Sandeep. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gajendra sir. So this is really a moment of pride for every one of us that during this COVID pandemic for last 1.5 years, sir, we have been connecting every week, and we are connecting with the new guest speaker to learn something from them and take care of the pandemic. And with the evolving pandemic, we have seen a lot of ups and downs. And for information to Dr. Chandrakant sir, actually we are an association of industrial physicians, occupational health physicians, and doctors from various industries, private and corporate, from different regions across India. And total we have more than 2,500 members across India. And this particular DigiConnect webinar is being organized every week by the Association of Environment and Occupation Delhi, which is Delhi branch of IUH. And Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain is our Vice President. And we will start with Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain sir, because he will give an overview of the he gives an overview of the epidemiological situation of this pandemic. And we had been every week we are being guided by him what is the situation and what all necessary steps accordingly we have to take in our respective organization, so that our organizations, our business continuity is not affected. This will be followed by, sir, your important topic, which is a very wide, vital topic for every one of us, a dynamic unlock strategy for business continuity. So with this, I request our Vice President, Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain sir, to start his deliberations and information to everyone. Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain is Senior Consultant, Indian Railways, New Delhi, with 40 years of experience in health and hospital administration, Fellow Award of Indian Public Health Association, Fellow Award of Association of Environment and Occupational Delhi, and he has published and presented more than 145 scientific papers in national and international congress, conferences, journals, and books, and fellowships and scholarships by WHO, National Institute of Health, USA, Canadian Society for International Health, International Clinical Epidemiological Network, and International Society for Priorities in Healthcare. So, sir, we are fortunate enough to have both the speakers. May I request Dr. Rajiv sir to start his presentation, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sandeep Sharma, and welcome Dr. Chandrakant Laharia. As we know each other for a pretty long time, it's such a pleasure to have you on this platform. So we start with the epidemiological aspects, the updates of COVID-19, global, regional, national, and subnational. I feel subnational is the most important aspect of these epidemiological aspects. Because data is something which is not easily available. And all the more difficult is to get data at one place in a manner that is analyzable. So we start with the global situation. Next slide, please. This is the current trend. And if you see, we in the world are in the third wave. If you look at the extreme right side, you find early third wave in the world. The bar diagrams, different colors, show the cases, and the black line that you see are the deaths. The trends in deaths as well as the cases show that there is a distinct third wave starting globally. And if you look at the regions, Americas dominate still the world. That is the region of the WHO, which is in yellow. And also you find substantial contribution of Southeast Asia region and as well as Eastern and European region. These three regions are still continuing, but one must not forget the trend in Africa. It is started. Look at the blue trend at the bottom right. It is showing increasing trend, as we shall see in the next slide. Next slide, please. Now, if you just look at the figure of new cases in the last 7 days, out of 100 cases, 100% cases, that is 2.99 million cases in the last 7 days. Almost 24% cases were from Southeast Asia region and 32% cases were from the Americas region. But not to forget that Eastern Mediterranean region is contributing 10% and African region is contributing 7%. But more important than this is the next column of changes in new cases in the last 7 days. Overall trend globally has been 10% increase. And the highest increase you find is in the Eastern Mediterranean region, that is 25%, 7 days to 7 days, right? And European region has shown an increase of 20%. Western Pacific region has shown an increase of 15%. And Africa has also shown 5% increase compared to the previous week. Only Americas has shown only minus 3% decrease. So overall, there is a distinct increase in almost all regions, that is 5 out of 6 regions of WHO. Now, if you look at the trends in the deaths in the last 7 days, out of 55,830 deaths, total deaths, 42% were contributed by Americas, that is mainly South America. 26% deaths were contributed by Southeast Asia region. 12% deaths were contributed by European region. And if you look at the change in the new deaths in the last 7 days, there has been an increase of 50% in deaths in Africa region, 26% in Southeast Asia region, and 7% increase in deaths in Eastern Mediterranean region. Only in America region, deaths have decreased by minus 11%, and Western Pacific region deaths have decreased by 3%. So if you look at the deaths, overall trend, there is only 3% increase in deaths week on week. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. If you look, this is the current total, no, previous slide. This is the WHO coronavirus dashboard of today, taken about 1 hour back. If you look at the cases newly reported in last 7 days, 33.6 million, and out of these, 9.6 were from American region, Europe 8.68 million, Southeast Asia 8 million, and Eastern Mediterranean 3 million. So we conclude that pandemic is very much there, not only in one region, it is there all across the world. All regions of WHO is showing a pandemic in its true reality. Next slide, please. This is the condition. If we look at the countries, imagine the highest number of cases which have been reported by any country in the world in the last 7 days were from Indonesia, 3.24 million. Brazil reported 3 million. India reported 2.73 million. United States 2.58 million. United Kingdom, Russian Federation, Colombia, and Iran and Spain have reported more than 1 million cases. Imagine Indonesia was nowhere in the top 10, but in the last 7 days, it is at #1 position. If you look at the cases newly reported in the last 7 days, 3.24 million, more than 10%. And look at the size of Indonesia. So the epicenter of pandemic now is in Indonesia. Next slide, please. If you look at the deaths during the last 24 hours, out of 8,849 deaths, Brazil reported 1,556 deaths, Indonesia 1,205 deaths, and Russian Federation 799, Argentina 610, and India reported 542 deaths, Colombia 498, and South Africa 377, United States 350, Mexico 230. So what do we conclude? We conclude that the deaths are still occurring in a large measure in diverse regions of the world, and Indonesia is having tremendous pressure due to COVID-19 these days. And Indonesia is not far off from India. Next slide, please. If you look at the Southeast Asia region, the 3 countries which contribute the highest number of cases have been India, Indonesia, and Bangladesh. And if you look at the 3 countries, the trends, there has been 7% decrease in new cases, but 44% increase from Indonesia and 35% increase from Bangladesh. If you look at the new deaths, India has shown 4% decrease, but there has been tremendous increase in deaths. That is 71% increase in Indonesia, and Bangladesh has shown 52% increase. And if we look at the trends on the bottom right, the purple bar diagram is showing at the right side, there is no indication that the second wave has gone. It is very much there. It is not going. In fact, you see a resurgence. The trend is towards increase during the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks. If you look at the trend on the bottom right, the same trend is replicated in the cases of deaths. Now we come to India. Next slide, please. This is the snapshot, the comprehensive view, 38,109 new cases last 24 hours, 560 deaths, 19.99 lakh tests, 20 lakh tests we are conducting. So this figure of 38,000 new cases is definitely a positive trend that we are reflecting the reality. 7-day average test positivity rate is been 2.1%. 4.2 lakh active cases are there in the country, but they're shrinking at -1%. That means the shrinking rate has decreased. It was higher in the last 4 weeks, in the last 2 weeks. Now it has gone to -1%. It's slowed. Total is 3.11 crore cases, 4,13,120 deaths have occurred. We shall discuss more about the deaths figure, and we shall look deeper into the epidemiological aspects of these deaths in the subsequent slides separately in this session itself. 39.94 crore vaccination doses have been given, and 38.8 lakh vaccination doses were given yesterday. We shall talk about this slowing down of vaccination in the subsequent slides. Next slide, please. This is the truth of India in 6 columns. Thus, India lives in its districts and states. The confirmed cases on the left column, Kerala, look at the size of this. Kerala has 13,750 cases, and Maharashtra 7,700 cases. Out of 38,000 cases, more than 50% were reported by only Kerala and Maharashtra. Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Odisha, Karnataka, Assam, and Manipur are also showing substantial number of cases. If we look at the deaths, out of 560 deaths, still 1/3 deaths are being reported from Maharashtra. Kerala has reported 130 deaths. Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Assam, Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, and Manipur are also reporting number of deaths. If we look at the tests per million per day, I would like your attention to be focused at the bottom 5 states, especially Rajasthan, only 443 tests per million. West Bengal, only 573 tests per million. Gujarat, only million. Nagaland and Madhya Pradesh, only 917 and 903 tests per million, while the Indian average is 1,458.4 tests per million per day. So these states are testing much less. And if you look at the district-wise data, you find their testing protocol is not spread all across the respective states. Now we look at the 7-day average test positivity rate. This is shown in dark blue column, the 4th column from the left. Sikkim 21.5%, Manipur 14.6%, Mizoram 12%, Kerala 10.3%, Nagaland 8.9%, Meghalaya 8.5%, Arunachal 8.0%. So what do we conclude? That 7-day average test positivity rate is very high in the entire Northeast and Kerala. If we look at the 7-day average daily growth, where the cases are spreading faster, they are in the entire Northeast, while the Indian average is 0.12%, Mizoram 1.87%, Manipur 1.21%, Arunachal, Meghalaya, Sikkim, Tripura, Kerala, and Assam and Nagaland are showing increasing trend to the extent of 5 times and 10 times of the Indian average. On the other hand, where are we at the vaccinated persons with at least 1 dose in percentage? Indian average 23% vaccinated. But look at the bottom. Which are those states? They are Bihar 13.69%, Uttar Pradesh 14.09%, Jharkhand 17.43%, West Bengal 18.45%. These are important states where substantial population of India resides in very challenging environment. Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Assam. These are very challenging environment, and there the population with at least 1 dose is substantially low. We should analyze the vaccination data in the states and districts in the subsequent slides. Next slide, please. This is the overall trend in Kerala. The daily deaths are 4 times the first peak. Active cases are growing at 1.1%, while they are falling at all India level. The test positivity rate has been highest in the country after Manipur and Sikkim. This is not a good time to relax containment. This is the reality of Kerala. So the pandemic is still in our backyard. It is very much here in India. Next slide, please. Now we look at the countries, territories, and areas reporting variants of concern. This is the position by the World Health Organization on 30 July 2021. If you look at Alpha variant, is in 178 countries, Beta is in 123 countries, Gamma is in 75 countries, and look at Delta, the bottom right, purple. Delta is in 111 countries now. You must have seen only 2-3 weeks back, it was only in 85 countries. Now it is in 111 countries. Equally important is to realize that all 4 variants are very much there in India. If you look at the 4 maps. Next slide, please. Now we look at number of vaccination sites. They are falling by 28% in July. Next slide, please. This is to say that 8 out of 10 districts in India have seen a decline in the number of vaccination sites in July. And the 10 of the top 15 districts by vaccination sites saw a drop in access. So access to vaccination is now a real issue in India. last 10 days of June and first 2 weeks of July, if you see, Bangalore urban 698 to 691, Pune 507 to 369, Mysore 355 to 341, Raigad, Chhattisgarh 306 to 334, Kalbugi 256 to 313. So there are a number of districts in the country where the number of sites has decreased. If you look at the map of India, all the light gray is shown by decrease. Light gray means the districts has shown decrease in vaccination sites, and the very few increase. The other red sites. The entire country is full of light gray color. Next slide, please. If you look at the overall figures of weekly change in COVID-19 vaccine doses per 100 people in percentage, India is now at the 3rd position. This is the weekly change in terms of acceleration of the velocity of increase. India has climbed 4 spots in vaccination coverage growth last week. And Japan is at 10.6. Japan is important because Olympics are going to start on 23rd of this month in Japan. And our contingent and other countries' contingent is very much there in Japan now. Philippines has shown 10.4%. Russia 8.1, Brazil 6.3, Indonesia 6.0, and China is 4.4. But if you look at the other side, cumulative COVID-19 vaccinations per 100 people, US is 100.2, China is 97.4, and Brazil is at 55.1, Japan is at 50.3, and India is at 28.1. So this is an area which requires attention, where India is to scale up its speed of vaccination per 100 people, because it has slowed down in the last 2 weeks, as we have seen in the last slides. Next slide, please. This is another reality of India. 7 of the top 10 districts with most new cases last week are in Kerala. If you look at Kerala, the dark red are Kozhikode reported 10,331, Malappuram 12,544, Thrissur 9,919. So this is another area of concern. Kerala's Malappuram reported 12,000 cases, the highest in any district in 5 weeks. Maharashtra again, Nandurbar saw the steepest growth, jumping to 349 cases this week from just 11 last week. The northeastern states are still reeling under the impact of the second wave and have 15 of the country's 23 districts that saw an increase in cases in each of the last 4 weeks. Mamit in Mizoram saw its cases double to 142 cases in 1 week. Next slide, please. This is a percentage of eligible population, which is 18 plus, which is vaccinated with at least 1 dose. Overall is 33.5%. But if you look at the variation, Uttar Pradesh is only 22.7%, Bihar 23.3%, West Bengal 25.3%, Tamil Nadu 27%, Jharkhand 27%, Punjab 28.4%, Assam 30%, and Maharashtra 32%. All the red states are states which need to increase the population of vaccination with at least first dose. Only then India will progress faster. Next slide, please. This is the percentage of eligible population above 18 years of age which are fully vaccinated. Overall, it is only 8.45%. But India resides in the districts and states. We dig deeper and we find wide divergence from the average. While Himachal has shown 18.14%, Kerala 17%, and Delhi 14.51% fully vaccinated. Bihar only 4%, Uttar Pradesh only 4%, Tamil Nadu only 5.8%, Jharkhand only 5.8%, Assam only 6.3%, and Punjab only 6.7%. These are states which require to space up the second dose of the vaccination. Next slide, please. This is another interesting fact. If we look at the pace with which the vaccination is going on. The districts which are likely to miss the target of 31st December, which is a target of covering all eligible population, that is 18 plus with at least one single dose. These are the districts which require attention. And if you look at the states, there are substantial districts in West Bengal, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Assam, Karnataka, Odisha, Uttar Pradesh, which will not be able to meet the target of at least one single dose to all 18 plus population. This is the trend projected based on past performance. So there is a need for a drastic change and acceleration in terms of vaccine access and vaccine equity for increasing the protection and containing the pandemic. And we must remember, second wave is still there. Next slide. This is another interesting fact that Maharashtra and Kerala are leading in the country in the number of deaths. And if you look at the extreme right, the trend is towards increase in number of cases of deaths. Odisha again is showing increasing number of deaths. The week-on-week death tally in Odisha has been on a rise in the past 1 month. Pune has recorded 567 deaths in the past 7 days, becoming the first district to go past 500 in a week since late June. 7 districts have reported more than 150 deaths each in the past 7 days. They are all from Maharashtra. Both Palghar and Thane saw a 3-fold increase. Next slide, please. This is a graph which shows how the states have tracked the deaths. Red dots against the states are percentage of registered deaths to all deaths in the country in 2019. And the gray dot is percent of medical certified deaths to total registration deaths in 2019. Look at the difference and the diversity. If you look at Maharashtra, 38%, Goa, 100% are reported and medically certified. But if you look at Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, only 5%, Jharkhand only 5.8%, and states like Uttar Pradesh only 6.5%, Uttarakhand only 8.9% are medically certified. This is normal times. Now, even this is the reality of India. What will happen during pandemic? The deaths will not be medically certified. If the deaths are not medically certified, how do we know what percentage of deaths during the pandemic have occurred due to COVID? Next slide, please. So how did the patient die? Registration of deaths has improved, but only 1 in 5 state the cause of death. Only 20% in India state the death certificate is showing that cause of death. If you look at the trend, and this is consistently in all the years, 17, 18, and 19, 22, 21.1, and 20.7% are medically certified deaths to total registered deaths. That is the reality of India. Percentage of registered deaths to all deaths in the country is also has improved from 79.6 to 92% in 2019. It is the real problem, and deaths are in India. India's Registration of Births and Deaths Act 1969 mandates compulsory recording of births, deaths, and stillbirths, including a medical certificate of cause of death. It is mandatory to register the death before applying for a death certificate. The death must be registered within 21 days of its occurrence with the concerned local authority. The certificate is then issued after proper verification. Apart from other documents proving identity and address, the application must be submitted with a medical certificate of the cause of death, particularly at home, and this medical certificate is neither sought nor the civil registration by the General of India is a repository of all states and youth. The vital status data generated through CRS is quite useful medical research and policy making in terms of healthcare and infrastructure. Now we look at the reality. There is another system which is HMIS by the National Health Authority. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yes. So another data which is in the previous slide, HMIS data could be utilized. Previous slide, please. Previous slide. Previous slide. HMIS is an important tool to understand what is the proportion of deaths. Can we use HMIS data to gauge COVID-19's real toll? So what does HMIS CRS data tell us about deaths during India's second wave of COVID-19? The top bar diagram is total deaths under HMIS each month. And what do you see? The red bar in May 21 is starkingly high. April also is very high. And all of the months, it has followed the trend of 18, 19, and 20. Increase in deaths in April, May 21 compared to 2019. If you look at the two outstanding, that is acute diseases and respiratory and other fevers, and also fevers on the right side, and the highest bar of respiratory and other fevers, they are the highest. So HMIS actually further corroborates this theory, because unlike the CRS, it also gives a breakup of deaths by causes. Fever and respiratory problem symptoms associated with COVID-19 show the largest jump in causes of death in HMIS data for 2021. It is also noteworthy that infant and child deaths decreased in April, May 21 compared to April, May 2019 in HMIS data. Children are least likely to die from COVID-19. However, the HMIS numbers are better treated as an indication rather than the quantifier of unrecorded COVID-19 deaths. So the trend is very visible. We have not been able to record substantial number of deaths due to COVID-19, but there are trends are available to show that there have been missing deaths. Next slide, please. HMIS is better used to capture a trend than actual number of unreported COVID-19 deaths. And this is the crux of epidemiology. We trust more the trends than the actual number when the data is insufficient. If you look at the bar diagram, state-wise comparison of HMIS deaths with SRS or CRS of 2019, what do you find? HMIS is showing less number, while SRS is showing the highest. SRS is the most reliable data. And if you look at the gap between the two, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar are showing the highest gap between HMIS and SRS CRS data. So that means there is a substantive gap between the deaths recorded and actual deaths which have occurred, which will be available through SRS data sometime in 2023, because there is always a gap and they are made available to the public. Next slide. This let's that found for orange. They are in Andhra Pradesh, they are in Madhya Pradesh. If you look at the least are green, and the maximum green is you see in Maharashtra and Gujarat. So least.
Your voice is breaking, sir. Dr. Rajiv Saab, you are not audible.
Sorry, my video connection or audio connection was lost.
Yeah.
I hope I'm now audible and visible,
Yeah.
Dr. Sandeep?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
All right. On the we were here where we were showing the deaths due to HMIS, and where we were comparing the trustworthiness of the data and the regional diversity. But these numbers could be a result of HMIS poor coverage. HMIS coverage is still evolving all over the country. Median of HMIS deaths in these districts as percentage of CRS data in 2019, you find most it has been more than 15.7%, and you find regional variations. So because of this, there could be regional variation which will be corrected or more visibly available after say 1.5 to 2 years from now. So this we have to wait, but we must understand this occurs because, as Dr. Chandrakant Laharia has always been saying, we did not have an existing public health system existing when the pandemic struck India. And what public health system has been, one has to understand. Even treatment has been part of public health system. Prevention, people forget that secondary, tertiary, and quaternary prevention are part of prevention. They are not standalone entities of clinical medicine. They are part of prevention and public health paradigm. So this is what we must understand and understand clearly, and start practicing and implementing public health policy to strengthen public health. In the last slide, there is the next slide, where Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said only 2 days back, self-interest is natural, but there is enlightened self-interest. Vaccines can be produced and the world can be opened up. It's in our hands. We can end it soon. Share doses, share know-how, share technology, and waive intellectual property. That is what India has been advocating along with other countries. Thank you so much for patiently listening, and we will be awaiting Dr. Chandrakant Laharia expectantly. Thank you so much.
Dr. Sandeep, you need to unmute.
So thank you, Dr. Rajiv sir. And the bottom line is we are still in the pandemic, and the pandemic is growing and is spreading globally. And the areas which were not affected earlier, like your Indonesia, and wherever the second wave was there, now third wave is also coming. Except US, the numbers are decreasing, but that was all because of the vaccination. So we should have a robust vaccination strategy in India with availability of the vaccine, and that will take some time. Until then, we have to be very careful in managing our all preventive and precautionary measures. That is what the message is. And regarding data compilation, also it is not up to mark in India, and the numbers which are being revealed in the government figures, they might not be exactly the exact situation which is there on the ground, because the number of registered deaths and the number of medically certified deaths and the number of cases, those who have been tested, they are quite, there's a great variation in all those things. So our next speaker is Dr. Laharia. Dr. Chandrakant Laharia is, he is a medical doctor, vaccines, public policy and health system expert for the 13 years, and he has coordinated with WHO work in India on new vaccine introductions, routine immunizations, health system strengthening, and universal health coverage. He has also been associated with a number of primary health care reforms in Indian states. He is widely known as highly respected experts of vaccine introduction and routine immunization strengthening. Dr. Chandrakant has published more than 200 articles and 10 plus chapters and one book. He is a regular external peer reviewer for 45 plus national and international bioscience journals. He is also the youngest fellow ever elected to Indian Public Health Association, and he is the lead co-author of the book titled "Till We Win: India Fight Against COVID-19 Pandemic" with Dr. Gagandeep Kang and Dr. Randeep Guleria. So, Dr. Chandrakant sir, today we want to hear from you regarding what should be a dynamic unlock strategy for business continuity. As you know that after lockdown, now the relaxations are being made everywhere, and even our industries, they are now, although they were maintaining, and none of our industries were closed, especially if I talk about my industry, Indian Oil Corporation, none of the location was stopped during this pandemic. But still, we have to maintain all the norms, and we were doing our business with the new norms of working, with work from home and the 50% attendance strategy. And now with this new relaxations, a dynamic unlock strategy for business continuity is very important, and how people should behave during this unlocking. And that is very important, and what all precautions we should take so that there is no new surge in cases and any threat to the businesses in India. This is very important for the lives and the livelihood of the Indian population. So Dr. Chandrakant Leheria sir, you can start your presentation. We are most welcome. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharma, and thanks, Dr. Gajendra Kumar, President of this society. And of course, with Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain, I keep meeting regularly and learned a lot from him. So thanks, Dr. Jain, for your really in-depth presentation. I knew you would have a very good slide, so I did not prepare slides. I'll go without slides.
Okay.
So I would focus upon unlock strategy, and then toward the end, I'll talk about vaccination strategy also. Talking about unlock, we know that from the very start of the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a focus upon lockdowns. Rather, we know there are two types of intervention. One is a COVID appropriate behavior, face mask, physical distancing, or hand washing, or hand sanitizing. But these are at the individual level. Now, we know that individual behavior is not immediately adapted. So what was done at that point of time in March 2020, India was put under lockdown. And since then, we know lockdown is a strategy across the world, except for a few countries, Sweden, South Korea, Japan, all countries implemented lockdown. India had 76-day lockdown for the first wave. And since then, Indian states continued lockdown or restrictions for a longer period. By November 2020, the lockdown and other restrictions were largely removed. And then in April 2021, India had another wave. We all know about that wave. And then since then, one of the key features of lockdown in second wave was that individual state had put lockdown or restrictions or whatever they called it. Now we need to remember that those restrictions were put at the individual state level, but we also know that in between, a number of Indian states also followed what they call night curfew and weekend curfew. Later on, they were called Corona curfew. But we also need to remember that some of those strategies were not very scientific. Let's take an example of why night curfew were implemented or weekend curfew were implemented. The idea of night curfew came from France. On 14th October 2020, France had started night curfew, and those countries also, European countries also started lockdowns, weekend lockdowns or weekend curfew. The reason was that the culturally European country works in a very different setting. So in the day, people do not go out, but in the evenings, they gather at the bars and restaurants, other places. So the more crowd is there in European setting during the night than India, where people go out in the day and night, people come back home, have dinner, etc. So European setting, especially Paris, started evening night curfew, that bars are closed or restaurants are closed. But other countries blindly started following that approach, that we put night curfew. Similarly, for weekend lockdown or weekend restrictions, in European settings, what they do, that people work on the 5 days a week, and then on the Saturday morning they take a flight and go to the beaches and other places. And that's why there was more crowd over the weekend in those settings. And that's why it was important for them to put restrictions over the weekend. And that's how some of those ideas came out, weekend curfew and night curfew, which India did, and those were not very useful. But India followed those, and then there were restrictions or lockdown during the second wave. Now all of that is over, and we know that business need to be continued. Economic activity is so very essential for ensuring good like ensuring economic activity need to be brought in. We know the virus is all around us, and that is very important thing. Now one thing is realized that we have learned, and all countries have learned, that unlock is not simply removing restrictions. And especially after the second wave, or even before second wave, we learned one of the important things which we did not know before the first wave. And that was that mode of transmission of viruses, in addition to aerosol, is the airborne mode, which essentially means virus can be there at a longer distance. And that was a key feature and determinant which should be considered in the current restriction removal. And that's what we need to remember. Like after the first wave, India immediately removed all the restrictions and almost forgotten that what to be done. But in the second wave, we have realized that there is a different mode of transmission, other aspect. Let's take example of United Kingdom. United Kingdom started talking about removing restrictions somewhere in around March 2021. And then they had a plan for till June 2021. They were supposed to open up on 19 June 2021. Then the Delta variant emerged in their setting. They said that they will open up on 19th July. So see, that's the kind of nuance strategy you need. You need a detailed plan. And I'll explain why we need a detailed plan and what India should do to unlock. So UK had a lockdown or unlock strategy which was over 5-6 months, and it was dynamic. That on 19th June they were supposed to open, and they said no, like now they will not. They will put restriction for another 1 month, though graded removal. And now they are also discussing one thing, that since earlier there was a plan that on 19th July, the mask will not be mandatory, or mask will be completely voluntary, or people will be mask free sort of. But now they are considering that that cannot be applied, and people need to wear mask, though the wording is very different. It's the English style wording where they would select appropriate wording, but key that it's not everything open, even though they plan. So that is what called nuance and graded strategy. Since India is in that stage, we also saw that Delhi government started opening up, and they opened indoor spaces first, and then metro started, while the parks were closed, and like swimming pools are closed, and even schools are closed. We will talk about all of this. So what would be the right strategy to unlock? One first principle, in my opinion, is that it should be well thought through, and in outdoor spaces should be opened first. And that's what have been done now. But we need to remember that unlock is itself a strategy. It's a strategy between the two waves of pandemic. So when we are thinking, we believe that the number of cases have come down, then we will remove the restrictions. But the moment there is any indication that cases are going up, the restriction need to be put on again. So it has to be very dynamic and agreed upon some basic principles. So opening, unlock, removal. First strategy that outdoor spaces should be more easily opened and opened immediately, and indoor spaces later. Why? Because we know the transmission is outdoor spaces less, and the virus or any particle will disperse and dilute, and then it will not affect. But indoor space is likely to stay inside. So that's the first principle. Parks can be opened, public places can be opened. Of course, COVID appropriate behavior need to be followed, but outdoor space first and indoor later. One of the good approach in this is that outdoor spaces should be open for 1 or 2 weeks before you come to indoor spaces. And what should be done, that during those period, one, it will give some time for the people to adopt to that kind of behavior, and government can also watch that whether people are following those COVID appropriate behavior in outdoor. If they are not following in outdoor, unlikely to follow in indoor. So that's why there should be some gap, 1 to 2 weeks between opening outdoor and then opening indoor spaces. Now, second thing is that in indoor space, like office premises also. Of course, people need to be trained, but before opening indoor space, somebody who understands the ventilation system, the appropriate and suitable modification should be done in ventilation of that space. For example, office workspace, if all office windows are completely sealed, it might be very useful for the in charge of that office, head of that office, to see that at least the common areas have that kind of windows or even glass fittings which can be opened temporarily. That kind of ventilation should be ensured, even though we know that air conditioning had to run some places, but temporarily closing some windows can remove the particles and dilute the particles. So that kind of modification required. Same is applicable for restaurants, bars, and even the owners of those establishments inside the closed space. They should be facilitated and guided by the government with appropriate guidelines that what they can do. How individual or the shop owner can increase the ventilation inside that place. And that's how it should be done. People should be given that opportunity and the training and guidance by the government. And or the establishment owner should be provided that kind of guidance. They should know that where they can go and get that kind of guidance. Of course, improving ventilation in every setup, people know, and improving ventilation is a key principle that it should not be closely recirculating air. Other part is that, of course, bars and restaurant ideally should be given, if they work inside, that they can operate from outside, and that's what is happening. But that may not happen everywhere. What I'm talking may not be applicable immediately, because some of the places this has been done. But if there is a next wave of cases rise in particular setup, those setups should also be prepared for such eventuality. When I say the next part is that graded opening, nuanced graded opening, which essentially means that when spaces are being opened, it should be in some facility. For example, metro has been opened, then it should be 30% capacity, 50% capacity. The behavior of people is watched during their journey and following those things, and then accordingly they should be guided or advised to behave properly or follow particular guidelines. One of the key principle, another key principle in opening up an unlock is that the way restrictions are being removed, like restrictions are removed, unlock is happening, the COVID appropriate behavior related communication should be enhanced. So a partial restriction removed, then COVID appropriate behavior advisory, advocacy, or other kind of information should be given. Next step or next principle in opening up is that government need to have, and now Delhi government has a graded response and action plan, and Mumbai already had that kind of plan, where or Maharashtra, 5 level of plan. But that kind of plan should be developed, clearly laid down, that okay, this would be test positivity rate, this would be hospital bed occupancy rate, oxygen bed occupancy rate, and that's what would be done. So that's another thing. What we are hearing now, that there are crowded markets, and there has to be a specific strategy for markets and other such settings. For example, government need to work, and the government stakeholders in that area need to work with the shop owner association, who should be monitoring the crowding, who should be ensuring that COVID appropriate behavior is followed. So the idea is that business should be continued, but it's not at the cost that people should get infected. So shop owner association, right, local association should be involved. And if there is a non-adherence to the COVID appropriate behavior, then appropriate action can be taken. And that's what is happening in Delhi. That some of the markets are being closed temporarily. I believe that's the right step. If we have to keep a balance, and that kind of measure can be avoided. Other approach could be that the number of people allowed in a particular market, a particular certain point of time, should be restricted. They should be counted. Like the number could be, for example, Sarojini Nagar market. If there is overcrowding, a local market association should do an assessment that if this many number of people are allowed, then it will not be overcrowded. Otherwise, it can be overcrowded, and that many people should be allowed. And similarly, true for malls and other places. And that's how we will ensure that things are opened up. Otherwise, if there is crowding, we will prevent ourselves from opening up further. So these are some of the areas, actions which should be done. and this can be done in close collaboration. I personally think that there are many learnings for opening up from different settings. For example, Bangladesh did implement it. Now they are in lockdown and the cases are rising, but that's a different story. Key is when we are functioning on a particular area, what can be done? When they were opening up after the previous round wave, one of the approach they followed and which is widely appreciated is called norm approach, where they started distributing and for no cost mask or free mask distribution. When people were being distributed masks, they started offering information and advice. So for offering information and advice. Third was reinforcing public messaging or public places COVID appropriate behavior. And fourth is a modeling by the influential citizens. So individuals see more as a role model in marketplaces. Shop owners were wearing masks. So normal no cost of free mask, offering information, reinforcing the guidance on COVID appropriate behavior and modeling. So we need to learn from different areas. Now, another strategy and approach which can be followed is the way Indian government put for lockdown, there was micro containment zones. The similar way for COVID-19, there should be a micro social behavior assessment. So in a particular area, how people are behaving, and that should determine that what restriction would be put in that place. So those are some of the strategies. And of course, when opening up the market association or any business setup or institution should encourage people to get vaccinated or should facilitate the vaccination. For example, if somebody work in a particular industry, that industry association or that organization should facilitate, bring in the vaccination, assured vaccination for those people. However, I also want to discuss at this that while I believe that facilitating vaccination for staff to ensure business continuity is a good idea, but it should not be mandatory in my opinion. No matter which setup, healthcare or other setup, it cannot be or it should not be made mandatory that you have to, since you work for an organization, you have to get vaccination. What we need to remember that vaccines provide individual protection. So they will protect the person who receive vaccine from moderate to severe illness and of course possible death if they develop disease. So that they protect. But even after vaccination, individual can transmit the infection to other individuals. So the benefit of vaccination in transmission is not that high. And that's why even after vaccination, individual need to keep wearing mask. Vaccine will protect me from my illness, but it will not protect the person who will come in my contact from myself transmitting the infection. So I can still get infection. I can have mild illness. I am protected after vaccination, but I can pass on the infection to another person. So, and that person can develop full-fledged disease. So it's important that people understand that vaccination is for mainly individual protection. It can reduce some transmission, and it's important tool as the unlock is happening, but it will not protect other person if some people are vaccinated. So facilitate vaccination in institutional setup. Making mandatory is not right approach. That's what I would say. Irrespective of whatever is happening in unlock period, the behavior on COVID appropriate need to be reinforced and repeatedly told that this is what will prevent. No matter which strain is circulating, the COVID appropriate behavior of face mask, physical distancing, and hand washing will prevent. Of course, these approaches at larger level and government level need to be more localized. Even any setup, it should be localized. We do not now there is no like in a office or workplace, only that individual or somebody who comes in contact with that person can be asked to get testing, but otherwise it does not affect the work or continuity. So I would summarize that many of these approaches can be used in one or other form, can locally be adopted. These are the broader principles. I have published on Unlock, one of the piece was appeared in the Hindustan Times on I think 8th July, where I discussed some of the Unlock strategy. Now I move to a different part, which is what is happening and how Unlock can be optimally utilized and when the next wave would come. And we heard a bit about from Dr. Jan. The key is that we are hearing, earlier we were hearing that next wave would happen in November. Now we are hearing next wave could happen in July. That's what, next wave can happen in end August, and the number of cases could go up to 100,000. What we need to remember that circulation or emergence of virus is dependent upon 4 factors. 2 of these are in our hands and 2 are non-modifiable in a broader sense. So non-modifiable are that we really do not know how long the immunity lasts or how immunity wanes off over a period of time. So somebody who got infected in April and May, when they would be susceptible again, we really do not know enough. Though India's first confirmed COVID-19 case on 30th July 2020 got reinfected, but that even that is around 17-18 months. So there's a fairly long period, but there is a possibility of reinfection. So we do not know how, when the immunity wanes off. That's one factor. Second is we do not know that which new variant can emerge and circulate. So these 2 are unknown, and as the immunity will wane off, a new variant will emerge. There is a risk of transmission of virus and new wave. But there are 2 modifiable. One is the quickly scaling up vaccination, and that can delay the wave. But we know that in vaccination drive in India is not catching the pace or slower. So even that is not in fully under control. And then 4th thing, which is modifiable, is COVID appropriate behavior. So only thing which is fully in control of citizen is that we follow COVID appropriate behavior. If vaccination can be ramped up and COVID appropriate behavior can be followed, the wave could be delayed. But now, and that was the assumption that people would have immunity, there might not be a new variant, vaccination would be ramped up and COVID appropriate behavior will be followed. But vaccination is slow. We know that there are crowds in market and there are people in hill station, and that is why it is being thought that the wave could come little earlier, and that's why we need to be prepared. We need to raise awareness, especially in office or other places, that the kind of interaction people are doing, they are going to market, everybody is at risk. Though next wave might not be very large, but if a new variant emerge, it could be a really big, though Delta variant, which recently caused second wave, may not be that severe or can cause that big a wave. Now, I want to touch some of the aspects on vaccines, and then we will move to question and answer if there is a possibility. One of the questions people ask, we know that there are 3 vaccines which are already being given with different efficacy. I don't want to go into detail. If need be, I'll respond. Broad principle is that after vaccination and even after natural infection, we understand that immunity can last around 9 to 12 months. So if somebody is vaccinated today and then like somebody complete full vaccination schedule today, the immunity will last 9 to 12 months minimum. It is possible that it may last for a longer period, up to 18 months or longer, but we do not know. We do not know because till now vaccines have been administered for this period or this much period only. Actual vaccination started in December, but there are people who were in clinical trials and their findings have been studied. So we have 1 year of experience with vaccines. And broad principle is that immunity can last up to 1 year. It may last for longer. But when we say immunity can last for up to 1 year, it is usually average 80% people, 70% people. There would be some people who do not develop immunogenicity or immune response even immediately after vaccination. So that's the broad principle we need to remember, that we are protected at least for 9 to 12 months from now, from the day one receive vaccine, second dose of vaccine. So that's a current understanding. It may change. And that is the answer that whether people will need a booster shot or not. It depends upon how long the immunity lasts and our scientific understanding will develop. No country as of now is administering COVID-19 booster shot vaccine, except Israel, which has started for some high-risk population. But they have started as a more of a research trial rather than a core principle, and they have used 6-month time period for giving booster shot. But currently no country has started mass scale booster shot. UK is considering. Many of us who were vaccinated either in last 3-4 months or now will have to wait till next year. So minimum is that don't worry about booster shot as of now. It may or may not be needed. It will also depend upon what phase of pandemic that period will fall. If immunity lasts 18 months and by then the pandemic is over or disease become endemic, it is very possible that the booster shot may be required only for the elderly or people with comorbidities or high risk population group. Now, the other question is that which vaccine is better? The answer is that all vaccines are safe and efficacy 77% to 95% for currently approved vaccine in India. Moderna is approved in India, which is around 95%. So all vaccines are safe and effective. For individual, like no matter what is efficacy, like 80% efficacy means the individual who developed infection, who receive vaccine, will be fully protected. It's just that out of those 100 people who receive vaccine, 80 will be protected, 20 will not be protected. So your probability with a little higher efficacy, your probability of being seroconverted increases, but that also depends upon individual behavior. So in my opinion, all vaccines are equal and safe, effective. Get one which you get. There is no point in waiting for a future vaccine or a better vaccine, because these are the first generation vaccine. What we are receiving today is whatever it is. All vaccine researchers will improve these vaccines and they will be, I believe, second generation vaccine, which will be with the same category of vaccine will be better. Which vaccine individual can take for a booster shot, we do not know. We will know when that happens, but it is very much likely that booster shot could be given of a different vaccine, but our understanding developing. Can an individual take a first shot of one vaccine or second shot of a different vaccine, the interchangeability or mixing of vaccine, that is being discussed? The answer is yes for other countries, but for the vaccines which are licensed, currently licensed in India, Covaxin, Covishield, and Sputnik, this has not been studied. So in India, you have to take the same vaccine for second shot, which you have taken for the first shot. In other setting, Europe, where mRNA-based vaccine are available, it has been studied that a first shot of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine and second shot of mRNA vaccine can be given interchangeably. That's what Bhutan is doing now. Bhutan is administering mRNA-based vaccine because they initially did India donated Covishield vaccine and then it was not available. So they have started mRNA-based vaccine. So viral vector vaccine, Covishield, and then mRNA-based vaccine can be given one after another. And the amount of antibody produced are many-fold higher than the same vaccine of viral vector is given. So that's true for other countries. Once Moderna becomes available, it is possible that the Indian government can say that you can take Covishield and followed by Moderna followed by Covishield. But right now we do not know. Many students and many individuals have questioned that we have taken 2 shots and we want to go abroad or this vaccine is not approved. Can we take another vaccine? Answer is no. We do not know, and individuals should not decide that if they have received full shot course of a vaccine, they should not go for another vaccine. We do not fully understand how it works and reacts, so please be careful. And those going to university and other travel, my advice would be that these vaccines which are there in India would be approved in the time ahead at global level, and it will be cleared. So it's just a matter of time. Then question arises, do we need to get our antibody test done after vaccination? The answer is not recommended. The reason is that if you receive 2 shots of vaccine, if you develop antibody, you know that you are protected on all likelihood. But even if you do not develop antibody, you are not recommended to receive another shot. You don't have to do anything. Without developing antibody, it is very likely that because of T-cell based response, you might have been protected. So after 2 shots of vaccine, whether developed antibody or not, doesn't make a difference. Just adhere to that protocol. And we also need to remember that even if we have antibody or if we don't have antibody, we need to keep following COVID appropriate behavior. There is no way out for COVID appropriate behavior. Like United States and Israel removed mask mandates in public places, and then with the Delta variant, they have to bring the mask mandate back. And we need to know that there might be some emerging variant. We never know when that would happen, because if a variant emerge it takes around 6 weeks before it can be identified in any setup. So we should follow all COVID appropriate behavior. When an individual who has developed natural infection should get vaccine, the government of India recommendation is that after 3 months from recovery, WHO says 6 months after recovery. I personally think that individual can actually, with the natural infection, individual may have a very good protection. So they definitely can wait for 6 to 9 months, but this is their choice. Who is not recommended to get vaccine? Only those individuals who have a past allergic reaction to a vaccination or any product in the vaccine, or with the first shot they develop severe reaction, then only those individuals are not recommended for vaccine. Otherwise, any other individual, be it any long-term treatment, be it somebody with on the cancer treatment, any other illness, everybody can take vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine. Vaccine is recommended for pregnant women and lactating mothers. They can take vaccine. Pregnant women can take vaccine at any point of their pregnancy. The idea is they should complete their second shot before third trimester, because third trimester is the highest risk for pregnant women. If they develop COVID-19, it can result in preterm delivery and higher fertility in fetus. So complete the vaccination schedule in pregnant women before third trimester. Any vaccine can be taken which is currently licensed in the country. Government recommend that any phase of any period of time, but of course, if there is a choice, people are making first trimester, any week, 13 weeks after, along with the TT vaccine can be taken. If the TT can be taken same day as COVID-19 vaccine, otherwise the broader rule is that there should be minimum 4 weeks gap if given on a different day. The other few common points people have that that how to read antibody report if they have gone antibody test done. The key that either you have developed antibody or not developed antibody, and the baseline reference for different tests is different, usually 1 or 10. So if you have more than the threshold, you have developed, you have been seroconverted. If you're less than that, you have not been seroconverted. However, there is no difference in protection by the quantity of antibody. So somebody who had, let's say, the threshold is 10 and somebody developed level of antibody 20 on that parameter, and other person had an antibody of 200, but both individuals are protected and most likely equally. There is no difference. Like somebody who had 200 may not be better protected, though it's possible that with the period of time, like the amount of antibody would decline, but our understanding is still developing whether decline in antibody means reduced protection, because we know there is a T cell based protection in the individual. The last two parts I want to flag is that will children need vaccination? In some parts of the world, 12 to 17 years old children are being vaccinated. US, Canada, European countries, not in India yet. Most like this age group. So in the children between the age group of younger children up to 2 years of age, and those who are 12 to 17 years are at relatively higher risk. 2 years to 11 years are the lowest risk. Like they have a really, really low risk of severe disease. Of course, all age group have an equal probability of infection, no matter which age group. Like other children may have a higher probability of infection, but children do not develop moderate to severe illness because the virus can reach to throat or nose of everyone, but to make individuals sick, the virus need to latch to the lungs of that individual. Now, to latch or to enter the lungs, the virus need to attach to a receptor called angiotensin conversion enzyme 2, ACE2 receptors, and those receptors are underdeveloped in children, and that's why even with the infection, children do not develop severe disease. The rate of infection in children is really, really low. So the vaccination is happening 12 to 17 years, and they are at higher risk in comparison of other children. But even they are at far lower risk of disease, severe disease. Now, vaccine for children like 2 to 17 years are being investigated or under clinical trial in India. And these vaccines are maybe licensed in the time ahead. However, I personally think that while our understanding would develop, but I am of the opinion based upon the current evidence that children younger than 11 years may not need COVID-19 vaccine, or not all children. Universal vaccination for younger than 11 may not be needed. We do not know yet, but that's some early evidence. And even if they are eligible, they would get vaccine. They would require vaccine much later, maybe sometime later next year. One of my piece on this aspect, vaccination of children, or are we in hurry or whether it will happen, is appearing tomorrow in Times of India, where I discuss in detail all these aspects, that are we in rush for vaccination of kids? And I argue that we should not be in rush. Children do not need vaccination that urgently. The benefit of vaccination is far less than comparison of adults. That brings to me to the final point, and which is the opening of the school, and which is part of the unlock strategy. So India is only one of the few countries, around 20 countries across the world, where schools have remained closed for much of the period. We know that in around 170 countries, in month of July 2021, children have been in the school at a various level, like partially or but children are going to the schools in 170 countries across the world, because children are at low risk. Other part is that many of the countries, France, I think many countries, there are a number of countries which never closed school except for the temporary period for younger children. So children who are in pre-primary, primary, or up to middle school are lowest risk, and they can go to the schools. And that's what is happening in other countries. They might not need vaccine, and no country doing vaccination for younger than 11 years. So even without vaccination, children can go to school. In any case, I heard the Chief Minister of Delhi saying that we will not open school till children are vaccinated. I don't think that is going to happen. Children are not going to be vaccinated. And so without vaccination, schools can be opened. Of course, different strategies are required. Maybe alternate day class, every three-day class, once in a week class, or other approaches, running, conducting classes in the open space, ventilation of the school classrooms being modified, and all those aspects. But the vaccination of children is not going to be mandatory for opening schools. Vaccination of teachers should also not be mandatory, though it's ideal that they get vaccinated, but should not be made mandatory. But it's better that teachers are vaccinated. Of course, there are many approaches, which is a separate discussion which we can have, that a bio bubble type of can be created, that children in a particular during the school will interact with the children in the same class. But at the end of it, even when schools are open, it should be the decision of the parents whether they want to send children to school or they want to keep online classes. But school should be open, and especially for the lower socioeconomic strata government schools. The reason is that we know from various sero survey that up to 80% of the children in Delhi slums were seropositive. Now, what are we waiting for? Like, those children can definitely go to school and should be going to school. The classroom learning is so important for overall physical, mental, and social development of children. The online classrooms are only helpful when they are supported by the parental guidance to the child, and in lower socioeconomic strata that does not happen. So school should be open, and any society which does not open a school and leave and also give choice to the parents is doing disservice. So that's another broader argument. Another mistake and error which Indian states are doing, they want to open school, a few, but open school for 9 to 12 years. That's a wrong strategy. 9 to 12 years are at higher risk. Schools should be open for a younger age group first. And of course, 9 to 12 can be open, but they require a little additional attention, more COVID appropriate behavior. But when they are opening, some of the states are opening for 9 to 12, their assumption is that those older children are more likely to follow COVID appropriate behavior, which is fine. But global scientific evidence say that schools can be opened and should be opened for 0 to or pre-primary to up to 8th standard. And that should be considered in India. Of course, it will require detailed strategy, something what we discussed for unlock. What Indian states should do, that policymakers should get the evidence, the public health experts, medical experts, education experts, should come sit together and develop strategy, give a choice, but children need to return to the school. Of course, if there is an emerging wave or something different, then it need to be modifiable, but the strategy to open school should be very much similar to what the strategy we are doing to open up the society or economic activity. There is a scientific evidence that every month children are away from the school, their learning loss, and learning is not simply school are not about teaching only or books or reading about. Their overall development and learning loss is 2 months. So by 16 months of closure of school in India, children in this generation have lost 32 months. And more so, the maximum loss has happened to those children who were supposed to join school, start schooling. And this is a 2 years of children, 2 years of 2 cohorts which have missed this opportunity. So I would like to conclude by saying that, of course, pandemic has been challenging. We have developed a lot of learning over a period of time, but I think there is a lot of science behind, and we need to start various economic activity, but and this should be done with the appropriate unlock approach. But beyond economic activity, the human capital formation, development of our children is so important. We should also give consideration and to opening up the schools. And as we know that pandemic would be over, but we really don't know when it would be over, and that wait will be really can be really long. We also need to know that pandemic would be over, but virus would be around. So we cannot leave all these to uncertainty. We do not know what are the benefits of vaccine, which vaccine would be better. I would say that I have delved detailed aspect of vaccination of children, including whether children should receive a nasal vaccine, which will stop transmission, or normal vaccine. So there are many unknowns. We cannot wait for everything to be cleared. We should use, and that's what epidemiology is all about, making decision based upon available evidence. So available evidence says economic activity open, keep learning, use those learnings, open schools, get vaccinated, stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chandkant sir. It was a great learning, and a lot of questions which are normally there in the mind of the people. They have been clarified, and they have been clarified from a person whose decisions they are based on the scientific evidences rather than just a lip service. So, as you rightly said, the third wave depends upon the 4 factors. 2 are modifiable in our hands, that is scaling up of vaccination and COVID appropriate behaviors, and 2 are non-modifiable, which is immunity, how much immunity we will generate, and which new variants will emerge. So lot of insight was given by you, which we can compile and we can use it for our benefit in our respective industries and in our society. That will be quite helpful in designing the policies. And as you rightly said, the numbers, although they are reducing, but still they have not subsided. Still the virus is there. It has not been eradicated. So it is the time for increasing the advocacy for the COVID appropriate behavior practice. That is very important. And as we open up the outdoors, they must be open first, and later on we can open up our indoor spaces based upon 2 to 3 weeks of experience, how people are behaving in the society. So accordingly, the things can be taken care of. So and appropriate ventilation is also very important, and it should be improved, and it should be ensured in the offices. And graded opening is very important, and we should not suddenly open something and then suddenly close it. So graded opening is important, and proper strategy we have to make for our workplaces, for our society where townships are there, for our industries. Markets are also there in these places, so they need to be guided by us from your learnings, that we should apply all these measures, and we have to watch the micro social behavior. This assessment should be done routinely, and we can accordingly make some micro containment strategies, and many other points related to vaccination, they have also been cleared by you, sir. Vaccines, they do protect us. Though they do protect us, they give us some they protect us from the severe illness, and but still we can get infected and we can transmit the infection, so we can be a threat for others, even though we are asymptomatic. And regarding these antibodies also, there were a lot of queries amongst our people also, that should they go for antibody testing after vaccination or after infection. But that is of no use. That is just of academic interest, because vaccine low level or high level doesn't show how much you are protected from the virus, because there are multiple factors which are there, and they need to be considered before we say that yes, we are safe. And regarding children, you have given a very broad overview, and you have given a right direction for every one of us. And because many of our township schools, they are also closed, so we can at least guide our management that yes, schools are important for social, mental, and physical development of children. We can start at least from pre-primary to 8th standard, and accordingly we can take our children to school, so that their development is not impaired. So with this, I open the floor for questions, sir. First, Dr. Rajiv Jain, sir, has raised his hand. Dr. Rajiv, sir.
Well, very simple, lucid, and comprehensive talk, Dr. Chandrakant, you've given through to your trademark.
Thank you.
People have are now calling you as the same voice of the pandemic. But in the sanity, sometimes we lose sight of the changes that healthcare system need to devise during the pandemic, on a scale which we are seeing the same scale for revamping the Central Vista in Delhi. Don't you agree that this is the right time to revamp our healthcare system in this country, to be better prepared, not only to be able to manage this pandemic, but also post-pandemic situation? That's one. Second, when we talk of workplaces, there are requirements for having a creche at the workplace. Creches are generally for children below 5 to 8 years of age, for working mothers. Because nobody's there to attend to them at their homes. What would be your recommendation for reopening the creches at the workplaces? So these are the two questions which have occurred in mind immediately. And thank you once again for a very comprehensive presentation on COVID-19 and lockdown, unlockdown, and vaccination.
Thank you. So I think that these are a really broad issues. One part on reform of health system, that's what all of us are making noise and arguing for. But as you understand, it does not happen immediately. But I think that's what should happen. And hopefully there is a new health minister, union health minister, and all of those suggestions will be taken forward. I have personally written and mentioned about this thing, but it's not about individual voice. So let's see what would happen. But I completely agree with you on that, that's what should be the dialogue now. Second part is on a crash at the workplace. I am not an expert in that area, but I think there are like the crash opening would be will take little more time, because even parents would be little apprehensive. However, the kind of dialogue and discussion and the relevant departments within the government or whichever sector those crashes are there need to examine and prepare guidelines on that. But current apprehension is that parents might not be sending their children to crash and not be interested in keeping the children in the crash as of now. So that's going to be a challenge. So that's my brief answer. It needs to be worked out. Now, unfortunately, another 5 minutes I have to go, so I can take all the questions in one go and then I'll stop.
Yeah, so there is one question from Dr. Damodar Lele, but I think it is clear because Dr. Ajeev Jain sir has already explained there is a difference between registered death and the medical certified death. So whosoever is buried or cremated, their death is registered, but medically it may not be medically certified.
I
Then
have
there is-
seen that question. So in the interest of time, I would say that it is only for like the people who die in a hospital, their deaths are, the cause of death is written. But somebody who does not die, like die in a village or other settings. So in those settings, we do not know cause of the death.
There's one question from Dr. DLN Reddy. Most of you have been taking of genesis of COVID protocols. One point that perplexes him is the way the hesitancy for vaccination continues. Why is the medical profession still hesitant with positive advantage of the vaccination?
So individual have always been on a spectrum of the vaccine hesitancy. There are people who accept everything, and there are people who do not, who are not willing to accept vaccine. So that is going to be a challenge. Here, the role of government and agencies which are involved in COVID-19 vaccination to identify why people are hesitant and develop a targeted strategy. That's what it had to be. I can read the questions. I can see
Yeah.
the questions here. Then.
Yeah.
Are you talking a practical way about indoor ventilation? There's not much of the possibility of cross ventilation, the structure of India, and we have habit of using every inch of space. Yes, but that's what we have to do at the workplace now. That appropriate retrofitting and modification will be required, and that we have to do, even though we do not have that kind of system. Either office spaces need to be modified or additional spaces need to be procured, but that modification will be needed in Indian setting. For a lady who took first dose of COVID-19 vaccine in pre-pregnant state, how much gap can be allowed for second dose of vaccine? Whether she should take both doses if gap is more than no. Okay, so follow the same pattern. Recommended guideline for to take second shot. No matter what is the gap between the first and second shot, you don't have to repeat it. So first shot taken at whenever, and then even if 6 months have passed, you don't have to repeat it. The dose is always counted. Kerala has highest vaccination. Why cases are still high? But highest may not be the enough. Every individual who is unprotected is susceptible, and Kerala has a high rate of transmission. But we also know that unlike rest of the country, where reporting is suboptimal, Kerala has better reporting and relatively low rate of transmission. Till now, there, as per estimate, while in India, around 70% of population is has infected, but Kerala it could be 50%. So susceptible pool is still high in Kerala.
Sir, Dr. Gajendra Kumar, sir, President would like to have.
Now, since he is in a hurry,
Yes, please.
I'll just compliment both the speakers, and I'll end with a comment that the people are required to follow the COVID appropriate behavior, but I think the government is more required to follow the COVID appropriate behavior, because on the government side, the decisions are political and not scientific. That is my, you can take my statement for the day. Thank
I
you.
agree. I completely agree.
Sir,
Thank
any last question from Dr. Tyagraj, sir? If you have any comment or question. Otherwise, we'll conclude the session because Dr. Chandrakant has to leave for some other assignment. So, Dr.
Yeah, I can come next time. I will be happy to come and join, but today, like, I'm little occupied.
Yeah.
That's all.
So, it was a nice session as remarked by many of the participants. And this recordings will be available on our YouTube channel, Enoch DigiConnect webinar. And many of the members who couldn't join, they can go and have refer to it. And we'll definitely call you in some other session with a definite new topic where we would use your expertise for our benefit, for our organization benefit, and for our association benefit. And I would also like to request, sir, wherever required, our association, which is the Association of Occupational Health, Industrial Physicians, our industries, they will help you in advocating whatever policy decisions you had been advocating with the government, sir. So thank you very much, Dr. Chandrakant, sir.
Thank you very much, and thanks to you, Dr. Sharma, Dr. Jain, and Dr. Kumar for inviting me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.